At times, a single day can etch a lasting mark on our lives, a memory that lingers like a scar. I still remember my brother's engagement, a grand celebration filled with laughter, sparkling lights, and countless camera flashes, yet behind the joy lay an undercurrent of judgment. That day, I felt like nothing more than a shadow in an otherwise brilliant scene. I wore a modest navy blue dress, nothing extravagant, just a quiet promise of invisibility. My daughter, Emily, clutched my hand tightly, her wide-eyed excitement a stark contrast to my trembling heart. As my younger brother, Darren, stood proudly beside his impeccably groomed fiancée, Veronica, a chill swept over me when I overheard a whispered remark. Veronica's icy tone declared that I brought bad luck, a statement that pierced the festive clamor and dredged up long-buried sorrows. In that single moment, years of painful history, the loss of my father, the quiet aftermath of failed relationships, the silent judgment that followed every mistake, came flooding back, leaving me raw and exposed. Surrounded by a sea of celebratory faces too busy to see my pain, I felt the familiar weight of being dismissed, an unwanted presence in a moment meant to be joyous. But then, as if to defy the bitter words and break the spell of silence, my brave 7-year-old daughter stepped forward. With a clarity and conviction far beyond her years, she took the microphone and spoke her truth. Despite the hurtful labels, she knew her mother for the loving, resilient person she truly was. It was that fearless declaration that shifted everything, a spark of hope that reminded everyone present that love, kindness, and courage have the power to heal even the deepest wounds. Welcome to Acts of Kindness Stories. This is a celebration of strength and compassion, a testament to how one small, honest voice can shatter old narratives and create a new, more beautiful beginning. Mia had spent years learning to shrink into the background of her own life. At Darren's engagement party, a moment everyone else celebrated with joy and exuberance, Mia felt trapped in a role she never chose, reduced to an accessory in a scene meant for others. The venue buzzed with light laughter, clinking glasses, and the constant hum of cheerful conversation. Yet for Mia, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken judgments. Every step she took in her unassuming navy dress carried the weight of unacknowledged sorrow and long-held resentment. From the moment she entered the spacious hall with her daughter, Sophie, clinging tightly to her hand, Mia sensed the familiar chill of isolation. Darren, standing by his radiant fiancée Veronica, who seemed to embody the family's pride, glowed under the warm lights. Veronica's presence, however, brought with it a coldness that cut through the celebratory air. A barely audible exchange between Veronica and Mia's mother, delivered with quiet finality and a nod that sealed Mia's fate, echoed in her ears, the suggestion that her presence would bring bad luck to the engagement. That single phrase reverberated through Mia's mind, dredging up memories she had long tried to hide. It took her back to a childhood marred by silence and subtle cruelty. She recalled the painful whispers that began soon after her father's untimely death, the unspoken blame that had followed her every misfortune, from failed relationships to the heartbreaking losses that punctuated her early adulthood. Every whispered comment, every sidelong glance had chipped away at her spirit. In that moment, surrounded by relatives too busy to notice the hurt in her eyes, the weight of those years pressed down on her more heavily than ever. Amidst this swirling storm of painful recollections, Sophie's bubbling energy punctured the silence. The little girl's curiosity and untainted honesty, so disarmingly genuine, stood in stark contrast to the carefully curated facade of the family. As guests began shuffling toward the stage for the ring ceremony, Sophie's innocent question, "Can we go up there, Mom?" reminded Mia of moments when hope had almost been forgotten. Mia tried to muster a gentle explanation, her voice barely concealing the knot of despair in her chest. "Not yet, sweetheart," she whispered, desperately clinging to a semblance of composure. Before Mia could guide Sophie back, the tiny spark of rebellion took form. In a moment that felt suspended in time, Sophie, a 7-year-old with eyes too wise for her age, stepped away from the familiar safety of her mother's side and began making her own way forward. The murmurs from the crowd shifted as everyone's gaze turned to the small, determined figure weaving through a sea of indiscreet glances. Veronica's icy stare locked onto the child's movement, her expression a mixture of disapproval and barely concealed triumph. As Sophie reached the stage, an unexpected hush fell over the gathering. There was no fanfare, no rehearsal, just the raw, unfiltered courage of a child who had spent too long watching the grown-ups hide behind smiles and veiled insults. With a steadfast grip on the microphone, Sophie's small voice sliced through the pretense. "I want to say something about the bride," she declared, addressing Veronica with a clarity that left no room for misunderstanding. The words were simple yet powerful, a declaration of truth from a place of pure love and recognition. For a suspended heartbeat, the room held its breath. Veronica's confident veneer wavered as Sophie continued, listing the countless ways in which her mother, Mia, had been a silent pillar of strength. The child recounted the moments when Mia had comforted her with warm, homemade soup on stormy nights, when she had read her stories until sleep claimed her, and when she enveloped her in hugs that spoke of unconditional love. Each detail resonated with the audience, evoking memories of their own battles fought quietly in the shadows of family events. The gentle cadence of Sophie's speech unraveled the tightly wound threads of pretense. Her words illuminated the truth that had long been buried beneath layers of regret and fear. "My mom may bring bad luck," they say, "but I know that she's the kindest, the bravest, and the most loving person. She is my safe haven," Sophie said, her voice unwavering despite the weight of the moment. The declaration was not just a defense. It was a celebration of all the small acts of love that had sustained Mia through a lifetime of hardship. As Sophie's honest testimony filled the hall, subtle shifts began to appear. Uncle Richard, who had always sensed that something was amiss in the way Mia was treated, offered a single measured clap that rippled through the crowd. His silent gesture spoke volumes, a quiet acknowledgement that perhaps the long-standing narrative deserved re-examination. Darren's eyes, which had momentarily met Mia's earlier in the evening, now shone with a pang of remorse and understanding. Even Veronica's stern facade faltered. The sharp lines of her expression softened in the glow of Sophie's fearless vulnerability. Throughout the unfolding scene, Mia felt an old, familiar warmth slowly stirring within her, a resurgence of hope that had long lain dormant. Memories of her childhood, once a labyrinth of silenced sorrows and unmet needs, gradually intertwined with the courage displayed by Sophie. In that transformative moment, Mia recognized that the voice of a child could challenge even the deepest-seated prejudices, that innocence possessed the power to dismantle the rigid barriers built by years of neglect and misjudgment. The narrative of the evening morphed from a quiet tragedy into a powerful statement of defiance. No longer a bystander in her own story, Mia felt herself rising. With every word Sophie articulated from that mic, the long-held belief that she was a harbinger of misfortune began to crumble. Instead, the truth emerged clear and luminous. Mia was the embodiment of love and resilience, qualities that not only uplifted her daughter but also silently nurtured those around her. In the charged silence that followed Sophie's heartfelt monologue, subtle expressions of solidarity emerged among the guests. Faces that had once been masks of indifference now revealed glimmers of regret. Hints that the assembled family members were beginning to question their own biases. While some whispered reassurances to one another and others averted their eyes in quiet introspection, the message was unmistakable. It was time to recognize the quiet strength of a woman who had given everything to nurture others, even when her own needs were cast aside. Mia's inner world surged with conflicting emotions. Pain from the past intermingled with a tentative hope for a future where love would not be measured by unwarranted superstition or the cold calculus of favoritism. Every remembered slight, every quiet dismissal now stood exposed under the bright stage lights. Yet, amidst the overwhelming tide of emotion, the genuine adoration in Sophie's eyes provided a soft yet powerful counterpoint to the bitterness that had long shadowed Mia's heart. The transformation in the room was palpable. Every whispered comment, every sidelong glance, began to shift toward a newfound recognition of personal worth and the transformative power of empathy. Family members, many of whom had been complicit in upholding an unkind status quo, now found themselves at a crossroads, facing the stark reality that even the smallest voice can speak a truth that forces them to confront their own shortcomings. In that transformative moment, the engagement ceremony shed its veneer of forced celebration and became a crucible for change. Each person present was invited, in their own way, to reconsider the narratives they had accepted and the silent judgments they had passed. The courage of one child, Sophie, had altered a night meant to showcase status and conformity into a living lesson about the importance of compassion, understanding, and the courage to speak one's truth. Mia listened, heart pounding and eyes glistening with unshed tears, as every syllable of Sophie's testimony echoed with undeniable sincerity. The accolades meant for the couple suddenly felt secondary to a deeper, more pressing truth. The real celebration was not about perfection or the fulfillment of societal expectations, but about honoring the quiet battles fought by those who live in the margins of family approval. Every step that led up to that defining moment, the hushed exchanges, the cold reminders of a painful past, the overwhelming feeling of being unvalued, now coalesced into a statement of undeniable self-worth. It was as if, in that brief span, the scars of old wounds were given a chance to transform into symbols of hard-won resilience. And though the echoes of hurt still whispered in the spaces between conversations, they were now countered by an unmistakable chorus of gratitude. A gratitude for the strength to stand tall despite the odds, for the courage to challenge a legacy of silence, and for the unyielding love that, even in its quietest form, proved to be the most potent remedy of all. This turning point, sparked by the unfiltered truth of a young child, resonated far beyond the glittering stage. It signaled the beginning of a long-overdue reckoning, a moment when the true measure of a person was not determined by ancestral superstitions or misplaced judgments, but by the concrete, unwavering love they bestowed upon those who needed it most. In that shared space of vulnerability and renewal, the family was compelled to confront the reality that the essence of kindness resides not in following tradition blindly, but in the willingness to listen, to learn, and, ultimately, to embrace one another fully. Mia felt the shift deeply, every fiber of her being coming alive with the realization that the narrative of her life was hers to reclaim. The silent observer was now stepping into the spotlight, bolstered by the fierce, unyielding spirit of a little girl who had dared to shatter the echo chamber of old wounds with the simple truth that love triumphs over fear. In the quiet aftermath of that transformative evening, a new understanding settled over our family, a recognition that the real strength lies in compassion, empathy, and the courage to speak your truth. The echoes of Sophie's brave declaration had not only shattered old narratives but also opened a doorway to healing. Each word from that small voice carried the weight of resilience and the promise that the way we treat each other can ignite change. At that moment, Mia recognized that her journey was far from defined by whispered superstitions or unkind traditions. Instead, it was illuminated by the love she so freely gave and the hope that now, finally, shone in the eyes of those who had long failed to see her worth. As the night deepened and gentle reassurance replaced harsh judgments, every family member was invited to reflect on the power of kindness. The fragile barriers of indifference began to crumble, giving way to conversations built on respect and a genuine desire to do better. The transformation was subtle yet unmistakable, an acknowledgement that every person deserves to be seen, valued, and celebrated for who they truly are. If this story stirred something in you, if you believe that one act of kindness can change the course of a life, please show your support. Like, share, and comment on this video to spread the message of love and resilience. And don't forget to subscribe to Acts of Kindness Stories. Help us reach 10,000 subscribers so that together we can continue inspiring change, one heartfelt story at a time.